Joseph O'Callaghan was the youngest person ever to go into witness protection in Ireland.
He got there after enduring a brutal experience with drug dealers and murderers.
We're doing a recap of The Witness in his own words on this episode of So Much Crime,
So Little Time.
So Jeff, today I actually went fishing for the first time ever. I have never been fishing before. What I didn't realise with fishing is there's a lot of just standing around and waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if you know this about me yet, but I like to be efficient with my time. And efficient. And fishing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you see where I'm going there. I'm sorry. But I felt like the best way for me to be efficient with my time was to go to patreon.com/so-much-crime, so little time, because not only was I going to see all of the updated versions of the membership, all of the new offerings that we have on site, but I had a potential to chat with us online. Also potential to get some exclusive swag, like a t-shirt, maybe even a hat, a cap from our show, in addition to some bonus content to keep, my mind busy while I was waiting for those fish to bite. Listen to some outtakes and maybe even some more time machines, that beloved section of our preview show, and also get that warm and fuzzy feeling as I'm freezing cold in that balmy summer weather in Santa Cruz, helping to support this really teeny tiny show. So Jeff, the next time you go fishing, don't forget to go to patreon.com/so-much-crime, so little time. You'll feel all the better for it. Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time. I'm Dee.
And I'm Jeff. And before we start, a quick warning.
Warning!
This episode will have spoilers for The Witness. We're going to discuss the whole series.
Spoilers. If you haven't listened yet, check out our preview episode on this show. It's the one before this one in your feed. And
we'll also put a link for The Witness in our show notes.
All right, let's give you a quick reminder of what this show is all about. The podcast was released in 2021. The host is Joseph O'Callaghan himself. It was originally 9 episodes, but then 3 bonus episodes came out. The most recent one was in 2023. The length ranges from kind of 20 to 30 minutes per episode. But Jeff, give us a bit of a quick overview of what we covered in our preview episode and kind of, what we had heard in episode 1 of this podcast.
Yeah. So in episode 1, we heard Joseph or Joey O'Callaghan telling kind of his life story. And specifically, we were hearing about his early childhood, which was pretty rough. He was surrounded by drugs, a lot of heroin. There were a lot of abusive men in his life. But his mom eventually moved the family to a kind of nicer neighborhood, Blanchardstown, a different part of Dublin. When he was 12 years old, he got a job with a milkman named Brian Kenny. And at the very end of episode 1, we got to see that Brian Kenny was actually not just a milkman, he was a pretty violent criminal. And that's kind of where it left a little bit of a cliffhanger there. And then, so we went on, we listened to the whole rest of the series. Dee, where would you like to start?
This was so emotional. I don't know if the emotion hit with you, but I just found this incredibly emotional. It felt to me like we were listening to someone's diary the whole way through.
Yeah.
We spoke in episode 1 about how it was Joey O'Callaghan himself who was the narrator. He was the voice, and we weren't sure if that was going to continue, and it did. And I think because it was just his voice, we really just, I don't know, it kept that rawness and it kept that realness. There was so much drama, so much like story, but there was no dramatic flair or leading questions to make it more dramatic. It just didn't feel like it needed that, and I think that's why it felt very intimate, maybe is the word I might use.
That's a good word for it. We've never listened to anything that I think is quite like this. I mean, almost to the point. And there were other
No.
voices. But they were very sporadic and very infrequent. There was this crime journalist, Nicola, I think is her name.
Nicola Tallant, yeah.
Yeah. Are you familiar with her?
Yeah, I would have heard of her before, yeah.
Okay.
She does a lot of work with stories about organised crime. I
Okay.
recognised her voice as soon as I heard it.
Really? Okay. Okay.
Mm.
And it was helpful to hear from her. I thought she had really interesting contributions, but it was also sort of startling when it was any other voice because it was so much of this one voice throughout. And you're right, it did feel like a diary. And in the story it was so brutal. Like this was so sad. I mean, to hear him talk about...
Sorry, I need to pause you for a sec before we get into the brutal and the sad. You said it was kind of stark when any other voice came in, and I have an American. I have a question for you as a non-Irish person.
Okay.
Did you notice the different accents? Could you identify that they were different, or did they sound very similar to you?
Yeah, well, mostly because try as I did, and we talked about this in the preview, Joey O'Callahan, I continued to have a hard time understanding a lot of what he was saying. But
really?
Then when someone else came in, I was like, oh, it's not that's just that I can't hear or understand an Irish accent. It's his Irish accent that I struggle with.
I love that you were questioning that. It's not the Irish accent. Oh, I thought I might misinterpret Irish accents in general. Like, Jeff, you deal with me all the time. You understand me 80% of the time.
Well, I mean, how often am I really listening to you?
Oh, well, that's true. That's a fair point. You're often just allowing me to speak, giving me space to speak, and then also saying your point. I get what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a bit harsh, but like I see what's happening there. So you did notice the different accents because it was quite stark to me because both Nicola Tallant and what was the other guy's name?
Oh, I looked this up, but I didn't write it down.
Because Nicola Tallant is actually from Sandy Cove, from what I heard of, and Sandy Cove is Southside Dublin, quite a posh area, I suppose you'd describe it as. Whereas like Ballymun would not be, and so the accents to me are so startling in that regard. But I thought both of the hosts that came in had like posh accents, and I found that kind of stark in a way. Because like I feel like even when we've heard from, because we've covered other Irish shows before, and I don't necessarily know that we've heard posh accents, and I don't know if it was like the comparison, like, or whether it was that they were particularly posh, because Sandy Cove is a particularly posh area.
I want to, so first of all, the other person speaking who is sort of the moderator, even though he does almost no moderation, like he really only comes in with a couple of clarifying questions. I don't think he ever introduces himself. In the credits for the show, it says it's produced by Ian Mullaney, but I don't know if that's who we're hearing. But I did want to say on the accent topic, the other person who we hear a lot from in one of the bonus episodes is Joey's mother. And I felt like her voice was very different.
Yeah.
Mary.
I noticed
Mary
that
is her
too.
name. Why would that be?
Yeah. Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, we spoke a little bit. I suppose it just depends. It's hard to know. I would say Joey's accent has a very thick Dublin accent.
Okay.
There is.
I guess his mother could be from somewhere different. I mean, your kids have thick California accents at this point, right?
They do not give over. Only in some words, and when they're speaking to some people. When they're speaking to me, they do not. No, his mum is definitely from Dublin, like 100% from Dublin. She's not from the country, but and like maybe she grew up in Ballymun as well. But it's hard. It's hard to know, like, where the accents come from. Whether it's like the street, like when he moved to Blanche, maybe that's when he moved to Blanchardstown, maybe that's when the accent. I don't know. It's hard to know.
Okay.
But I just thought the accents were very stark. And it was an interesting one because I also noticed his mum had quite a much softer Dublin accent. Because they all have Dublin accents. every one of them have a Dublin accent. Maybe I should have led with that.
And how distinct is a Dublin accent from like other parts of Ireland?
Do you remember Una Linsky's parents and her dad?
Oh yeah, I do.
And that was just like that was Meath, that would like the county over.
Okay.
I think it was Meath they were in.
Yeah, that's right.
So like very distinct.
Okay.
There's so many accents that go on all over the place in Ireland. I always find it fascinating here. I think we've had this conversation before about accents, but I always find it fascinating here. I've asked people and I try to ask it and I always feel like a snob or something when I'm asking. I'm like, is there not accents like in pockets?
In America?
And people are like, oh, well, like in San Diego or SoCal, you might have these accents, whatever. And I'm like, no, but like in Ireland, you'd be like, oh, I'm in Temple Oak and people from Tala would know that, like, they'd be like, oh, you're not from Tala. Like, if I come into Tala, they'll be like, you're not from Tala, even though we are like 2 bus stops away.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely regional accents in the US, but I think the areas that they cover are just larger. Like, the scale is just different.
Yeah, but the scale is so minuscule in Ireland in so many areas. Anyway, sorry, we're going off topic, but I just find it really fascinating with accents from an outsider's perspective, looking in at like Ireland, and when we had this like really small amount of people from geographically such a small area, and I can tell where they're from, but you are like, oh, well, I don't know, maybe they're from somewhere else. And I'm like, no, they're definitely all from Dublin. It's just very interesting to me.
I mean, the same thing is true in like London, right? Like, I think there's different parts of London have very distinct accents.
London, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We could talk about accents this whole podcast, but we should probably talk about more of the story.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Before we jump into that, though, was there any other cultural things I need to explain before we start diving into like the brutalness of this entire thing?
I mean, yeah, I feel like there's a lot that are tied to the story, and there were some things that I thought about. There were a lot of things I recognized I just did not understand, the cultural reference or just what he was saying, and I just sort of moved past because I got the broader point, but I mean, some of them are kind of late in the story. Like, for example, the whole Brian Kenny prison situation, where he goes to this other prison where he gets to like go into town for like coffee and like
yeah, like
that's not a thing in America that I'm aware of. There's no equivalent of that. But what is that?
Well, remember when we covered something fire?
The Amikamoto one?
Yeah.
That was called Fire Escape. Yeah. Fire Escape.
Didn't in Fire Escape, wasn't there like, I know they were working as they were working in the firehouse, but didn't they get to have certain privileges because they were working in the firehouse?
That's true. I mean, firefighting, I think, is an exception where prisoners get to go out and but I don't like the way it was described. It sounds like the prisoners are just sort of allowed to stroll into town.
Yeah. I think also you have to remember that Ireland doesn't have the privatization of prisons that you guys have here. And we don't need to go into that. We've gone into it so many times.
Sure.
It needs to be spoken about, but we don't need to it doesn't need to be given space, I don't think, here. But we don't have that. So basically, as soon as someone is in prison, the taxpayer is paying for it. So the quicker they can get them out, the better, basically, if they're rehabilitated. And that's the whole focus. And I feel like that is one aspect of it. I did want to ask on a note about that is like, why was Brian Kenny, like, why do you think he was treated so well throughout his prison sentence? It feels like Nicola Tallant was very surprised about it. I was wondering, was he giving people up throughout his prison sentence? Because I felt like Joey was saying throughout the podcast, you know, when Brian was having his down days or his down times, being like, why do people hate me, whatever, like, and he was beating Joey up or abusing him or whatever.
Yeah.
He would say, he wouldn't have said to him, but like internally he would be saying, like, sure, you're ratting on people. You're either ratting on people or you're acting as if you're Tony Soprano.
I mean, the trick of this is, I think it's a net strong positive that this podcast was pretty much exclusively told through Joey's viewpoint. But a negative of that is that you don't know some of these things. You only know what Joey knows. And that is a good question. And I did wonder that. Although what we get from Joey is that that first time that Brian gets arrested, he immediately flips to how to basically bribe everyone who could potentially put him away. And they start stealing, like stealing cars and putting them in fields so that they can, like, the police can go get them. Like they're stealing everything they can find. Like, it seems like he is a master manipulator, and he's always like got a con or a game going. And so I just presume that pattern continued in prison, that he was still like working people and working this game in order to get some advantage. So, I mean, we also found out that he was getting access to drugs, which maybe isn't that hard to do. I don't know. But it seems like he was sort of like a perpetual manipulator. So I presume that's why he got that special treatment and privilege.
Yeah, but that was on the outside. That was on the outside when people didn't like necessarily know or whatever. Like it's bullshit that like...
He doesn't stop those tricks though. Like, he doesn't change who he is.
And I think it kind of nearly arguing against the point I was just making there. I was wondering, because as I was listening to that, and as I was listening to Joey and his mom like saying he needs to, like, he should be locked up, like life should mean life. He's only done 19 years and he's always asking for parole or whatever. It was interesting because in my head I was like, God, we've had so many conversations about people who have made mistakes and who, and how the prison system here is such a fucking disaster.
Sure.
And yet, in this case, you can see how the prison system in Ireland, which is like a different sort, like it's a totally different system. It's also not necessarily working.
And let's talk about something there. So we've talked about that before, but one thing that was different here was you've got this person who's in this witness protection program for a period of time, and then he goes back to live with his mom. Like, he's back in the town that he lived before, where people know him. I like that story about where he was in that relationship with the man for what, like 2 years, who didn't know his story, and he had to keep like avoiding places where someone might recognize him. But how does he possibly pull that off? How do people not know he's there? That I just fundamentally didn't understand. Like, of all the places to not go, like, don't go live with your mom again.
I think, but that was his point. He's like, nobody will.
Sure, no. For a minute, but he was there for years. I just didn't understand. I don't know.
What was interesting to me about that was like this weird circle of his mum brought them out of Ballymun because of the drugs and to try and give them a better life. Brought them to Blanche.
Yeah.
And then brought them back. And when Joey needed to be somewhere safe, it was Ballymun she brought him to. And it was interesting that it was there that he felt safe and that she felt that he was safe. And that was bizarre to me. Like, it was kind of this weird, I don't know how to say, like, it was just this weird full circle moment nearly of like, wow, I was really trying to do a thing, and really where you were safe was where you were known and where we were known, because she says that in the bonus episode. She said it, that she thinks Brian Kenny preyed on them because he knew that they were new and that people didn't know to tell her, to warn her, and that they didn't know who he was. Right. And we spoke about that in the first episode.
All right, I'm going to accept that we're going to talk about this all out of order. Let's talk about Mary for a minute here, the mom. And so she has this bonus episode, A Mother's Story, which was, how hard was that for you to listen to?
Oh, God. I cried numerous times listening to this podcast. Like, I didn't bawl crying because I don't think that's what they were after, but like I welled up and I just had so many emotions. That episode was so heartbreaking because it was this weird comparison, balance. I don't know the right word to use here. I could hear her expressing the weight of her guilt.
Yeah.
And like, why does he even want to have anything to do with me? But like at the same time, there was like the weight of her pride for her son.
Yes.
And it was this, she was holding both of those things in her hand, and she was explaining it in a way that wasn't dramatic. It wasn't nearly scripted. Like, it felt so natural. And I think that's why I said at the start, like, this felt like a diary. It felt like I was listening to someone's diary, because Joey never felt like he was there was twice I felt like he was scripted throughout this entire thing. And I think because it was so natural, it felt so raw and it felt so intimate. And I felt her urge to want to do something really good for her kids.
Yeah.
And then her guilt for having her feeling like she made the wrong decision. And then her looking back and thinking I was such a fucking idiot. And she said, the guilt. I'm so stupid. I was stupid. She just kept, like, there was at one point she just kept repeating it. And I think the reason maybe that kind of hit me is because throughout the podcast, honestly, that's what I was thinking about her. I was like, how is his mum letting this happen? How is she not there? Because I thought it was so easy throughout to forget how old he was.
Yeah.
And then you'd be reminded. Like, he was only, 19 when the trial happened. He must have been 18 or 17 when he admitted to what was going on.
Yeah.
So he was basically living with someone else, and she didn't really know what was going on. And yet, it just, as they said, it just built up and built up.
Well, we had these like small clues, and this is why I kind of appreciated that it wasn't narrated more kind of deeply, because we heard from her that she had 6 kids.
Yeah.
We heard in the preview episode how, I mean, she was going from kind of abusive man to abusive man. She said in that bonus episode that she was working at one point upwards of 3 jobs at a time, just trying to support these kids as, I guess, a single mom. And like, she tried to move them to a nicer place, right? Like, she's trying to make a good life for them. But I mean, there's only so much she can do. And I did wonder that earlier in the series of like, yeah, where is she? How is she letting her 12-year-old get sucked into this world? But also, like, she had 5 other kids, and she had 3 jobs at different points, and she just wasn't there. She couldn't be there all the time. And she was relying on the oldest kids to take care of the youngest kids. And there was a moment where it's like she almost blamed, I think, her older daughters, but I feel like she didn't really do that. I feel like that was like she pulled back from that. And you're right. Like, it was that fascinating mix of guilt and pride. And the pride, I think, is an important thing, because the pride, this is something I wanted to talk about, because this came up in the last couple of episodes where this was a harrowing podcast. We heard some awful things, and what happened to him was just horrific. And there's some really grisly details of things that happened to him. But who he seems to be now, on the other side of it, is remarkable. Because there were moments where we're hearing about him after he goes to the police, where he has these suicide attempts, where he is so, like, he's still, like, strung out on drugs and just needs therapy. I was actually listening to one of those episodes towards the end where I'm like, why aren't they getting this person into therapy? Why he needs psychological help? And it wasn't happening for a long time. And I think it was his mother who arranged it, who got him into a year-long program, like a residential program.
The Priory?
I think so, right?
No, it was Nicola Tallant.
Oh, was it?
She kept writing articles about it.
Oh,
and she basically was like, you have to, like, this is bullshit, that he is being treated like this. He's the witness that took these massive, you didn't even realize how big they were in the drug world, and he took them off the street, and they had murdered someone, and they were planning to murder someone else, and this is how you're treating them, and this is his impact, and he needs help. She was the one to advocate for him to get to the Priory.
Okay, that's important to know. Okay, but my point was who he is, who we hear him being at the end of this, which is like it's the fact that he got pulled into this world at 12, right? Like he was groomed and manipulated and abused for years, for his whole like teenage years, and that he managed to escape, that he had the courage to testify, to stand up to these people. So many people who could just kill him and probably still want to. And then, and on top of that, what's sort of, I feel like, kind of unsaid throughout this whole podcast is he goes and writes a book about it, and then he makes a podcast about it, which I don't know.
He's kind of shielding himself. No, he's kind of shielding himself in plain sight. I love it. I think it's the best thing ever.
I mean, can you imagine doing that?
No. I can't imagine being as brave as he was. I can't imagine having lived the life that he did. As I said, I think it was hard to remember the age of him at sometimes. I think there was very jarring moments that reminded me of his age.
Yeah.
To bring us back to episode 4. So he's gone through so much. There's so many things that he's gone through at this stage. We get to episode 4 and there was this moment where he speaks about his dad passing away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he said, you know, I remember being in the morgue. I remember my mom saying, you should kiss him. And I kissed him. And he was so cold. And he was so shocked. And I was so confused. As the listener, I was so confused. And I was like, geez, like he's probably only like 15 at this stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like maybe 15, 16. I was like, oh, like because of so much ground being covered and so much happening to him, it felt like episode 1, yeah, he's 12, but like it kind of felt like, he has to be much older by the time we get there. And it was like these moments like that that just kind of jar you and realize, wow, he's so young.
I think that's right. I mean, I think, and then the episode after that, episode 5, was the one where they tried to basically have him have sex with this girl in exchange for drugs. And
God.
That also kind of hit me aside from the fact that he didn't want to for other reasons, he just was so inexperienced and so young. And he didn't know how to handle that kind of situation, which is, I think, just speaks to his youth and immaturity and inexperience. Because, yeah, he couldn't have been, I mean, he was probably 15, 16 at that point, right? Like, he was super young. It's not always clear how old he is at different points in the story.
No, but like, I mean, Brian Kenny knew the abuse that he had, the sexual abuse that Joey had endured at Kenny's hands. And like to have said, like to be putting this up as if this is fucking funny, like it's just, there was so much. And I think it came up again. God, was it episode 6? I think we was talking about the eyes of your man Thomas Hinchin. So like at one point, I think in episode 6 it was, Joey describes Brian Kenny and Thomas Hinchin saying like they both kind of, you could see they were both kind of giddy by each other because of, they could see evil in each other. He said it was in the eyes. They could see it in each other's eyes that they were pure evil. He said if you look at photos of them from the newspaper, from the media, whatever, you can see it's pure evil in their eyes. And he says he wakes up at night still seeing those eyes, at least at the time of recording of that episode, which would have been 2020 maybe. Yeah, just so fucking jarring. I did want to say, on the note of his age though, and you mentioned, you know, it's wild when you hear him speak and he's what he's become. It's kind of incredible, and it really is, especially in the bonus episodes. Like, I mean, throughout, absolutely. In the bonus episodes, he's shown this gratitude to listeners. He's shown this gratitude to Nicola Talent and the producers for giving him his platform and like being able to allow him to speak. You can really see his growth and like how much he's really embraced the opportunity to recover from his addictions, from his PTSD, from everything. But what was so wild to me is I've often heard of how drugs, particularly drugs before the age of 25, have this monumental impact on your brain and your development. And it just, I don't know, not that people can't, but I don't know, that was just because he had so much of it. Like he just seemed to be off his head for like, from the age of, I don't know, 12.
Yeah, I mean, they started giving him cocaine just to have him like get through the night and just to keep going, right? From like 12, it sounded like.
And it's not even until it stops, because then he continues to use drugs, and then he gets addicted to benzos and stuff like that. And it's only when he gets to the primary. So this could be going on 10-ish years. And yet he's got so much growth and he's so much gratitude. I don't know, he's so inspirational when you hear him speak. Like, fucking hell. It's
really, I mean, we listened to him endure so much. And then, I mean, that turn that sort of happens around episode 7 where he escapes, and kind of hearing him describe like how he figures out how to get out of the house, you know, deal with the stairs, deal with the door, like get his sister to come pick him up. I love the little aside about how his sister is such a badass and she had a black eye at her confirmation. That was a great detail and told you so much about like who she is.
So much about her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like she had to have makeup to cover up the black eye at her confirmation. It's like, yeah, this is the kind of person you call to come help you escape from a place like this. Mm-hmm. But then it like, he has that like incredible moment of escape, goes to the police station with his mom. And then it's just like there with his mom. You think like, okay, suddenly he's like a little boy again.
I know. He's in a cell?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, lads. Don't be doing that now.
And you just think about the type of manipulation that he endured of believing that he couldn't go to the police because the police were not safe. They, like, Brian Kenny had influence there. And just how kind of good in an evil way Brian Kenny was at this. Like, just, we heard these like bits and pieces of this, but the accumulation of it was sort of overwhelming. I mean, like, there's these little details, like the fact that they would dress alike, like Brian would have them dress alike, or like share bathwater, like gross stuff like that. Or like Brian raped him on his 18th birthday and then turned around and asked him to babysit his kids. These details would just kind of flow out of him from episode to episode. And like you step back from it, it's just like this for like starting at 12 years old. How do you come out of this on the other side and in any way recover from that? And it seems like he has. I mean, it seems like he's remarkably recovered. And maybe this book and this podcast was part of that recovery. Like maybe getting that.
Well, I felt like that's what he was saying in that bonus episode. He was saying like that it was kind of therapeutic to talk about it. The voice that we hear that isn't Nicola and isn't Joey here, we think is Ian. You know, they have that back and forth. He says it. He says, you know, Joey says, like, you've heard me cry. We've spoken for hours on end. You know, you're basically a therapist now.
Yeah.
So this has to have been that therapy in a way to get it all out. And also to have had people hear it. And even he said, like, you know, this man and his wife, like, sat his kids down and made them listen and be like, listen to this. Don't be this child. Because this is happening so much. I'm sure not just here. I know it's happening in a lot of areas all over America as well. It's happening so much where they're just using, and Nicola Tallant said at the end, like, they're using the kids to do the dirty work. They're keeping their hands clean.
I was thinking about The Wire, right? They make references to some of the media, like The Sopranos and stuff that influenced them. Yeah. But I mean, I think they referenced Bronx Tale. Did you hear that? Did you see Bronx Tale?
I did. Yeah.
But that's exactly what happens in Bronx Tale.
I think after a night out at maybe like 3 a.m. one morning a long time ago.
Such a good
movie. We did rewatch it at not 3 a.m.
But I mean, that's what happens in that movie, right? Like the mobster character preys on a kid, a teenager, because he knows he can be manipulated more easily. And that's the same thing that happens in The Wire, right? Like, you've got these kids who are the front line, and they're expendable and they're easily manipulated and they're easily lured by the promise of small money, relatively small money. And then they get sucked into this world and then they can't escape. One thing I wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about yet, that letter that we hear about from Todd, I think it's Todd O'Loughlin, the murder investigator, who wrote like the handwritten letter to Nicola Tallant, and then she shares it with him, where Todd is basically talking about just how important what Joey O'Callahan did. That was amazing.
It was amazing. I felt like, because look, I adored this podcast. It's in his own words, it's in the title. But part of me was like, okay, look, it is one voice we're hearing here. It's one side of the story. But things like that letter, particularly, because we hear from his mum. Great. She's backing up and saying, like, this is what happened. And, you know, like, giving her recount as well. But to hear from the detective, to hear this is also how I remember it. And, like, he was incredible. And he has done wonders. Like, it kind of takes away any question over that one voice.
That's a good point.
I never really questioned it. It was more just from we do maybe have to be like slightly aware that it's one voice. Yeah. But it always felt so genuine because he was never trying to make himself, I didn't think, sound like always the greatest person. You know, he was saying the shit he did that was terrible.
I think that's true. And you're right, though, because the other voice we hear a lot from is his mother. And what's his mother going to say? Like, she's not going to call bullshit on his stories. But I also feel like the way he told his stories was so genuine. And you're right. It wasn't self-aggrandizing, right? Like, he wasn't the hero of his own story. I mean, he was the victim of his own story. But I don't feel like it was... It felt honest. It felt authentic. And I mean, a lot of these things are things like you just wouldn't make up or you wouldn't embellish because why? Why would you? It's not that type of story, really.
The other thing I felt was so powerful was, to me, I felt like the episodes were so quick. It felt like there was like a very abrupt end to the episodes and kind of nearly an abrupt start. Like there was no warm up, there was no outro. It was just very harsh. And as I was listening to them more and more, I was kind of wondering, are they trying to mimic the kind of the relationship, the abuse, or just the whole story itself, which just is fucking harsh. Like there is no, you can't sand this down to be polished. There is no polished version of this. There's no polished voice. You could tell it in an accent that, you know, non-Irish people might understand a bit clearer, but that's not the version that needs to be told in his words.
Yeah, I didn't think that necessarily. I felt like it was matching the type of story it was trying to tell, and that if they had introduced like a theme song or like a previously on or like a next time, that would have made it feel more artificial, less genuine.
Yeah.
Even the fact that sometimes they would begin an episode with the part that ended the previous episode, that was almost like just enough sort of artificial construction. It was definitely
even saying like we discussed this before or something. Yeah.
It was super jarring when the ads popped in at the end.
I know. I was like, oh my God, we're over?
Yeah.
That's it?
Well, it was such a tonal shift too.
Do is what I heard.
No, I thought it was very well produced. I thought it was very like this is a case where less is more, like less production. Like there was music, but it was sparse. There were sort of like these dramatic pauses to kind of let you know that they were transitioning from one thing to the next, but it was really minimalist production. And I think that fit here very well.
One thing I'd love to ask you is like, we get left hanging here. We don't know if they got parole. Do we?
It's not said. I Googled it. I actually I Googled it quite a bit.
And I couldn't find an answer.
I couldn't find anything. I'm presuming he's still in prison, but
I presume if he was out, we'd be able to find it.
That would be a story, right?
Brian Kenny out?
Also, because the last
Lang
update came out in
Land.
2023, and it sounds like he's applying for parole every year. So he would have applied for parole a couple
He
times
said
since the
every
last episode.
4 years.
Oh, every 4 years. Okay.
Yeah, no, he's still in.
Okay. The question I had for you was, so prior to doing this podcast, he wrote a book. Would you read the book?
I think I would. I think I might. It might be a book I'd buy to support him. I think that might be actually a more honest answer that I would say. I really thought that for me, and I know this says a lot about me, one of the things I really liked about this was the lack of graphics about a lot of the abuse. There was a lot of graphic details about machetes and hammers or whatever. There was a lot of detail about there was sexual abuse. I feel like a book is probably going to go into more details of particular abuse, of attacks, of drug, of everything. And I want to support him. So would I buy the book? Yes. Will I buy the book? You know what? I fucking will. Do you know what I'll do, Jeff? I'll go home to Ireland because I'm not going to buy it here. I'm not going to buy it on Amazon. I'll go home to Ireland at Christmas time. I'll buy 2 copies and I'll gift you one when I come back in January. So you can have one and I can have one and we can leave them up there. And whether we read them or not, we can say, well, fucking done, son. That was unbelievable what he did. Like, so incredible. I don't know that I would have had the balls to do it. I don't know, Jeff, if I would have had the courage to have done what his mother did and say, you need to go to the police. I hope I would.
I mean, and that's in the podcast, but like, she's under threat too. Her other children are under threat too. Like, this is a risk to the whole family.
And this she says. She says, like, I've lived my life.
Yeah. This is a remarkable story.
It's really, really incredible. Paul had told me about this a long time ago. A good while ago. I feel like I told you about this a good while ago. I put it on the list a good while ago.
Yeah. It's been on the list for a while.
And he had said, like, look, it's brilliant. I just can't believe, like, having gone through all that, how he could be my age-ish.
Yeah.
He's been through all of that and seems to be so fucking grounded and so... I don't know.
Whereas you're a mess. I mean, by comparison.
Do you know what this means in Ireland?
No, what does that mean?
It's like this, but like 7 times worse.
The 2 fingers up?
Yeah. I do actually have some reviews to discuss. All right. This is left 4 months ago. Reddit. It's very long. This is one of the most gut-wrenching, moving, harrowing stories of resilience I have heard on a podcast. And the fact that it's almost exclusively told through the eyes of the victim and not the podcaster, with as much detail and vivid imagery, is quite astounding. I have cried, felt nauseous, and been disgusted by a lot of what the story is about. If you can handle the context and get through the very heavy Irish accent... It's not an Irish accent. Well, it is an Irish accent, but it's very heavy Dublin accent, to be fair. Please give this one a listen. For me, this will go down as an all-time favourite. I have to agree. Honestly, think this might be one of the most powerful podcasts I've ever listened to. Which I feel like you didn't get. I don't think it hit you that way because you didn't understand so much of it. And then it was like, note. Wait, it says, note. The narrator has a very... thick and heavy Irish accent. I would encourage anyone to review the transcript after each episode or play it at a slower pace. Jeff, were you playing it at 1?
First of all, where were the transcripts? I didn't see transcripts. I look for transcripts.
Were you playing it at 1?
No, I was playing it at 1.2.
Jeff, this seems to be who owns the problem.
No. Okay, but do you know how many Irish podcasts we've listened to at this point? I'm not counting you as an Irish podcaster, but I feel like at this point, I should be good at this.
It's a different accent.
But we've done.
Okay. All right. You don't get it. someone responded to say, I'm from a country where English isn't my first language. I'm fluent and all, but the accent the man narrating made it so hard for me to follow along, which is sad because you were the second person recommending this podcast and I believe I would have loved it. And then someone responded saying, you could read the transcript, but I can understand. Bummer. Someone else, though, responded to say, best podcast I've ever listened to by a long shot. Stopped and cried mid-run.
Yeah. Just to respond to that, though, we said this in the preview, and I think one of the things that we were curious about was, would it continue with him being the primary narrator? And I acknowledged how I had a hard time understanding what he was saying. And I think I might have said to you that I understood like 70% of what he was saying. It was probably higher than that. It was probably like 80 or 85% of what he was saying. But I also think that's enough to get it. And I understood enough that was impactful for this still to be very high up there in podcasts that we have listened to, despite not understanding every word. And if anything, and maybe this is a bit of a reach, but the fact that I had a hard time understanding him made me listen more intentfully and maybe like try to hear him more. And I did recognize that this is a me problem, that he is telling his story. And no, I didn't slow it down because I wanted to keep going. I was just so eager to keep hearing what was happening that to slow it down would have taken that much longer to get through. That's my defense of myself. But also a voice in support of this.
Chanel 5059 said, I think being South African, we are used to having to tune into different accents quickly. So it wasn't a problem for me at all. Definitely will recommend to everyone I know.
That's interesting.
So many people are just saying, another person, business leader 8366, it's heartbreaking. I think about it a lot. I honestly so often read reviews on Reddit about podcasts. And I'm not just saying this because it's an Irish one, because this is, we've listened to other Irish ones. I've never read so many, not just positive reviews, but reviews where people are like nearly stopped in their tracks. Like, I stopped and cried.
But what, like, okay. And I think this speaks to something that, it's funny because I was listening, I was editing some of our older episodes earlier, and I was thinking about some of the things we are critical in podcasts of. And something we often say we talk about the lack of primary sources or the lack of hearing from people who are close to the crime. And whereas this was all that, and I think in some of the podcasts we think are the best, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of hearing from the people at the center of the story directly. And so, yeah, it makes sense that when you have a podcast that is 90% or more, this person who is at the center of it all, that's going to hit you real hard. And that's going to be very memorable. And I'm curious, 6 months from now, how distinctly we remember this compared to other ones that we've maybe forgotten completely.
So it feels like we're both in a few months. Let's see how much we remember this. For me, stand out. All awards need to be given. I think I'm going to remember this for so very long. I think I'm going to think about this for so very long. I might shed a tear about it now and again when I think about everything that Joey O'Callaghan has been through. And anytime I hear about this in the media, because we are going to hear about it, because at some point Brian Kenny is going to get out.
Seems inevitable. Yeah, I definitely definitely keep thinking about this, and maybe this is one we can revisit in a future episode and give an update on what's going on with this story. But yeah, this is one that's going to linger for a long time, for sure. Before we go, we want to hear what you think. Did you listen to The Witness? If so, what did you think about it? How did you do with the accents? How hard did the
Irish
story hit
folks, tell us how you thought about it, because, you definitely understood what was going on here.
I want to hear from our American fans. What did you think? Also, while you're letting us know what you think in a comment, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening, be sure to rate us. If you haven't yet done that, if you've been listening for a while, and
5 stars, please.
Yeah, definitely give us a rating. It really helps other people find the show. The other thing you can do...
rating. The rating. The one and only rating. Please give us 5 stars. Really helps.
Also, remember to tell everyone you know about the show, about this episode, about all of our episodes, whatever your favorite is. Let them know. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right, Dee, next time, I was listening to The Witness, and I thought it'd be really interesting to hear another story told by someone at the center of it. But this time, we're going to hear from sort of the other side of the crime. We're going to hear from the person who committed the horrific crime at the center of the story. When Janaire Girardo suspects that her husband is having an affair with his boss, Janaire begins secretly recording the new lovers. When her husband's deceit becomes too much, she begins recording herself as well. And then she writes a suicide letter outlining a monstrous plan for vengeance. We're going to be listening to a podcast called Bad Bad Thing, Season 1. It's a cautionary tale told through Janaire's actual recordings with insight from an esteemed clinical psychologist who helps unravel what can happen when powerful emotions like desire, betrayal, and revenge take root in someone's soul. That's on the next.
Fuck's sake, Jeff.
That's on the next So Much Crime.
So little time. Oh my god, that sounds wild.
So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of Mind Glove Media. The executive producer is Paxton Caloriso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Our theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show on your podcast app. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.